It's incredible how processes exist. We know they're there, but actually our ability to pick them out and stick with them is sometimes just so challenging.
Actually, we need to keep the standard high because people's lives, in a lot of instances, especially in the helicopter world, literally do depend on it.
Yes. It really has to be a team effort for everybody to recognise there needs to be a shift in the company culture for us to be able to make the improvement that we want to see.
Yeah.
Because
we've certainly seen instances and, probably recent accidents around the world at the moment where it may well come down to the fact that... Luke, it's great to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really delighted. It's been a little while, but there's something that I think we really do need to talk about because we're seeing it more and more in the industry at the moment, I think on a global scale, and that is this whole subject of following procedures.
Yes. It's incredible how processes exist. We know they're there, but actually our ability to pick them out and stick with them is sometimes just so challenging.
Yeah, I'm a bit puzzled because following procedures is something that we get drummed into us when we're going through our training as a mechanical and engineer. It's something we just should do. And there must be a whole host of reasons as to why people don't follow procedures.
For sure. There's a conversation around what personal minimums we may or may not be exhibiting when we go through. So we go through our training, we have it drummed into us about the importance of following procedures. But actually our personalities and our characters will mould how receptive we may be to that. But one of the key parts is once we come out of our training and into an operational environment, it's working alongside peers during those formative years sometimes can really make a difference as to how much we follow those processes.
Yeah, and those peers may not have had the same level of training that somebody's had, or maybe they were trained many years ago, decades ago. Maybe they have fallen into maybe even bad habits or routines. Or you were mentioning something earlier off camera about culture, company culture. Tell us a bit more about that.
So the personal women of peace and company culture are so intrinsically linked that an organization is made up of people. Those people all have their personal minimums, which is formed through their entire working career, their upbringing, etc.
Yeah.
And it's the collection of those personal minimums which ultimately create the company culture that we are working within. So new people join and we talk about company culture. Actually, that company culture is impacted and affected by each and everybody's team and the members within it to organise how likely we are to adhere to certain processes that have been put in place.
So we've just been mentioning personal minimums for the last couple of minutes. What are personal minimums and why are they so personal and yet so important as well?
So personal minimums are exactly that. It's about our intrinsic anchor to what we hold to be a minimum standard that we'll accept.
That's really good. So you said minimum standards. So as aircraft mechanics and engineers, you're saying that we should have a personal standard that we look to always live up to every single day of our lives.
Exactly.
Okay.
Put it like this. When you work in a new organization, you'll turn up for the first day and you'll observe certain practices, whether that's as you walk through the door, hangar cleanliness, or the way in which different people interact with each other. Internally, you'll have that moment which goes, ooh, is that better than I've seen before, or is that worse than I've seen before? And actually, that is really benchmarking against your personal minimums.
Yeah. So tell me, what do we do when we are working in an organization where maybe the personal minimums or the standard we're observing around us is not the standard that we've personally been used to working to? What are the internal battles or conversations going on inside somebody's head at this point?
The internal battle really is all about whether or not you accept that standard or whether or not you say something. And this is where it gets quite difficult, especially within teams and organizations. There's this idea of a group of people all wanting to work together. Great examples in science experiments where actually people stand up together and sit down because of what they see. Yeah. The problem then comes is that what you do with that is what starts setting your personal minima and begins anchoring it. So you're working with a team, the standards that you see are better than what you're used to or what you're expecting. That brings your personal minima and it raises your game. Ultimately, you become a more conscientious engineer as a result of it. The problem comes when you come into an organization and you see personal minimums below that standard. You're going through a whole host of things. You don't want to necessarily upset the apple cart. You're the new kid on the block. You want to be making friends. You don't want to be causing trouble. And it's very easy to say in a sterile environment that as engineers, we have certain standards. We understand that flight safety is critical, and therefore I would never in a million years accept a standard below my personal standard. But in the crux of it, the complexities of the psychology of what's going on can mean we get into situations where we accept things that we never ordinarily would do.
Yeah.
You often hear accident investigations or incidents that have happened where the engineer afterwards will say, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe it. And it's because of the complexities of that situation which can drive us to act in certain ways.
Yeah. And when an engineer or mechanic looks back and says, I can't believe I did it, if they were to analyze their thought process, the reason they probably did it in the first place was due to everything you've said, but also the belief, whether conscious or unconscious, that nothing bad would happen as a result. So now we're in this cycle of, do I speak up or don't I speak up? We're weighing up the risks of speaking up, and the risks might be, if I speak up, I'm the new kid on the block. How's that going to affect the team dynamics? How's that going to affect people's opinions of me? So it's very easy then to stay quiet, but now we're hoping that nothing will go wrong.
How many times have we been in that situation where we go, I would never normally let this happen, but just this once, I will.
So we're working with assumptions at this point.
For sure. And that's the moment where quite often you can start subtly impacting your own belief structure and your own personal minima.
Yeah.
You see something that you're not comfortable with, that you don't necessarily like. You're the new kid on the block. You think, okay, this is clearly what's going on. I'm just going to wait and see what plays out. I'd never normally do this, but in this instance, I'm just going to, find my feet before I say anything.
Yeah.
And then that situation comes around again. You go, well, it's still quite early days. And actually, last time I did that, no bad outcome happened as a result of which you go through that slow erosion of your personal minima before actually your personal minima, which was here, has now become your normal practice.
Yeah, so your standard has slipped over time due to the culture and the norms of the place that you're working in.
And it is strange that company culture is based on people, and people are also the company culture. So it's within each one of our gifts to be able to positively impact that company culture. But it really has to be a team effort for everybody to recognize there needs to be a shift in the company culture for us to be able to make the improvement that we want to see.
Yeah.
Because on your own, as a lone voice, it's a really difficult place to be. But when the team that you work with, even if it's just your shift, 5 or 6 people in your gang of working, turns around and said, right then guys, we've seen some stuff that's been going on. We don't like what's happening. So consciously, let's hold each other to account and let's raise our standard. And you can then see those little green shoots where it becomes a safer environment for people to say, I see what you did there, but let's call it out and let's challenge ourselves to make this change.
Yeah. By
doing that, as a group, you can start pulling your personal minimas up, which in itself impacts the company culture.
Yeah.
It may well be a team of 30, 40, 50 people at a maintenance base, and just 5 people start this movement where we say, this is what we're going to do. Because then everyone else looks and goes, well, actually, I see what they're doing. They're working to a much better standard than us. I want us to do that as well. And those small changes, even with grassroots movements, can make such a difference.
I like that. And really, it's about saying, not on my watch.
Yes.
Not on my watch. And that's not to say, not on my watch, let's sweep stuff under the carpet. Not on my watch, we'll never have anything go wrong. It's about, not on my watch, will we lower our own standards as individuals, but also really collectively.
Yes. It takes a conscious thought process to realize we must stop the trajectory that we are on and we must do something different.
Yeah, really good.
And whilst an individual can do that for sure, the strength of character needed by that individual is phenomenal. And actually the resilience needed for that can be really difficult.
Yeah.
And that's why having that conversation on a tea room or in a morning meeting that turns around and says, I'm not comfortable, how about you? That collectively you can work together. There are statistics that say that when you do something as a group, if you go to the gym with a friend, you're much more likely to go, because on those moments where you're feeling like I don't want to do this or I can't, your teammate, your friend, your colleague will be there to back you up and go, don't worry, I've got you.
Yeah,
this
really
is
good.
what we're here for.
Yeah, so we're not talking about team members who've got each other's back by letting something slip, or, hey, we're going to take this shortcut. Yeah, mate, that's fine. I've got your back. Actually, we've got our backs when we're standing up for doing the right thing. We've got each other's backs for pushing our own standards upwards.
Yes.
We've got each other's back when we're up against it in terms of pressure, because this is the industry we're working in: pressure, stress, distractions. We've got each other's back to say, hey, just before we send this out, or just before we sign this off, are we confident we've done everything in accordance with?
If you're not working with people who are there to support you in becoming better, then probably you want to take a look at the people that you're working with, because each one of us really wants to become a better version of ourselves. And that's, not some sort of cheap new age conversation. It's about, how can I continually improve on a professional basis to become better at what I do, for the reasons of flight safety, but also for selfish reasons. If we become better engineers, we become more attractive, more employable, more valuable people to organizations, and more opportunities. It works on both sides.
Yeah, that's good. And I think pilots would want to know that they've got a team of engineers and mechanics behind them who aren't going to just kick anything out the door. They are going to actually put their hand up and say, hang on a minute, just wait a moment, just 60 seconds, let's double check something. Because at the end of the day, it's the pilots got families to come home to. And I think sometimes, certainly within our world, the maintenance world, we can lose sight of the fact that there's people's lives at stake. So it's not just about keeping that standard high for our own reasons. Actually, we need to keep the standard high because people's lives, in a lot of instances, especially in the helicopter world, literally do depend on it.
Yes.
And we've certainly seen instances and, probably recent accidents around the world at the moment where it may well come down to the fact that the standards had slipped as a result. And actually, those engineers and mechanics didn't consciously let them slip knowing it was going to be somebody's life at stake, but they just let it slip because, hey, it's the practical drift that takes place on a day-to-day basis. So we've got to take those conscious efforts.
For sure. And there's a really great tool, which I know we're going to come on to, and we're going to talk. That's for sure. These cards, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on, it's about understanding personal minimums exist, and then actually having tools which can identify when those things are slipping, because sometimes we don't always notice those things happening. So we can intervene in a really positive way, which we'll come on to, I'm sure.
Yeah, really good. So Luke, we've talked about people's personal standards. We've talked about culture and norms within a company, but let's just close by thinking about an individual who's on a team. They may be a new individual on a new team because it's a new company, or they may have been there for a while, and for whatever reason, they're seeing things that are below their standards. How can we encourage or give some practical tips about how that individual can speak up?
So there's two elements to this. The first one being is, if what you've just seen is unsafe, it's a live situation, if you like, then the first thing you need to do is you need to escalate that there and then. You can't let that go and for it to come back and go, oh yeah, I did know that it happened. We need to do something. So if you see a practice that you think is unsafe, first off, by having that conversation with the individual and saying, actually, I'm worried about what we've just done there, or why we've made that decision. Because it could well be that we're all human. It's a lapse. It's an issue that somebody's inadvertently done. With that, I always encourage, after the event, put a safety report in. This is about learning. And when we miss things, it's how can we stop that from happening again? If, however, you have that conversation with the person and they kind of fob it off and go, well, that's just what we do here, and you're worried about that safety standard, you need to find somebody else that you can escalate that to. And that can be really difficult in the moment for all the reasons we've talked about earlier on. But this is about live flight safety, and we need to make sure that that aircraft isn't released where it could pose a hazard to somebody. So you would go and find another supervisor to escalate that to, have that conversation. If it goes the same, it's basically keep going up and up that ladder. And also, if you find you get to the very top of the tree and you've not been able to do anything, for me, make sure you have sent an email to somebody, put that in writing and
That's
say,
good.
dear whomever it is, I've spoken with numerous colleagues. I am sending this to you because I am concerned about it. Because it helps evidence for you that you've had that conversation and you've escalated it.
Yeah.
It's unlikely you're going to come across those situations, but if you do, it's good to know that process. And it's about having those conversations informally in a crew room that turns around and says, actually, we've noticed what's going on. We've seen what's happening in other teams. Let's take that stand and let's work to turn this ship around. Because by collectively agreeing that as a team, in the heat of the moment, if things are problematic or things are going wrong, people are expecting to be challenged, and it makes that challenge much, much easier to be able to have with your peers and even with your supervisors.
Yeah, really good. So you said something very important there, which is in advance of the situation where you might be required to put your hand up and say, hang on a minute, what are we doing? In advance of those situations, we've got to think, what would be our response in those situations? It's much better to think about it in advance and know who you would talk to, and even have the conversation with your peers to say, hey, what would we do in a situation where we've got, I don't know, maintenance control on the telephone telling us we've got to get this plane out, we've got customers jumping up and down or pilots waiting. Have the conversations before, so you're more likely to give an appropriate response rather than just reacting in the heat of the moment.
As individuals, nobody likes the fear of the unknown. And so if you can plant that seed as to working out what would happen in that moment, it's not an unknown situation anymore. So when things aren't stressed, when things aren't heated, you can have the conversation to say, is it okay for me to be able to challenge you even as my supervisor? And you go, no, of course, that's what we want. You've opened the ground for that conversation to happen. And so now when I have that conversation, it's not a fear of the unknown. What is Sam going to take from this? You've openly said, I want that conversation. So you are more welcoming for it.
Really good. And then finally, it's up for leaders and supervisors, team managers, whoever. They've got to take the lead. They have to, it's a lot easier for people in your team to put their hand up and say they're not comfortable with something if your manager, supervisor is the one leading the charge and saying, hey, this is my standard. This is the standard for our team, not on my watch. We're not going to have things, well, you might have things go wrong, but you're not going to consciously do things wrong. You're not going to consciously not follow procedure on my watch.
We talked about escalation in that first instance. It's the same. When you are escalating to a manager and you know that your manager viewpoint aligns with yours, the confidence to do that escalation is there. When you escalate to a manager, you're putting yourself out there. And if you're not sure what the response is going to be, we're back to that moment of, perhaps not this time around. You have to lead by example, and you have to create the safe space for those people in the team to know that the answer they're going to get from you is consistently, you're right, we are here to deliver a standard and a safe standard.
And over time, that builds a consistent picture. Even if what's gone before, even if there's been managers or supervisors before who have not led in an appropriate way, or they've been biased towards particular individuals, or they've turned a blind eye even, being consistent in doing the right thing is what's going to change your culture.
Company culture comes down from our personal minimas. And so the personal minima of the person before might not have been where it needs to be, but the new person can set that culture by really setting their personal minima at the standard that they expect to see.
Excellent. Luke, really good again. Always worth having these kind of conversations. So look forward to the next time.
Thank you.